Welcome to Raising Daughters, the podcast that helps parents learn the best ways to support their daughters as they navigate the high levels of stress, anxiety, pressure, and uncertainties so pervasive in our culture today. Dr. Tim Jordan is a developmental and behavioral pediatrician who has specialized in counseling girls for over 30 years and sheds light on the realities of today's young women in all facets of their lives. This is your opportunity to learn how to better support your daughters, making them feel safe, secure, and truly loved in the midst of life's ups and downs. Here is your host, Dr. Tim.
Hello, friends. Thank you for stopping by here to Raising Daughters, this podcast which I bring to you every week. Different topics about girls, raising girls, what's going on for girls, etc. And, as we get to this time of the year, I think everybody seems to be a little bit more busy than normal. And so I asked myself the question the other day, why does everybody seem to be rushing around so much? Why do the girls who I work with in my counseling practice, my retreats, my camps, why do they all seem so busy and rushed? I read a great quote years ago from Mother Teresa. And Mother Teresa said, "Everybody today seems to be in such a great rush, anxious for greater riches and anxious for greater developments and so on, so that kids have very little time with their parents, and parents have very little time with each other, and so in the home begins the disruption of the peace of the world." And I think that's so wise, and it's also very timely. That quote is probably from 50 or 60 years ago. And just think of what she would say today with this sped up kind of world, if you will. So I want to talk today a little bit about why are we so rushed? Why are our children so rushed? Why are we, the adults, the parents, so rushed? Why is our culture so busy and rushed? I think our culture, first and foremost, has sort of accepted this belief that our lives should be busy and full, not just full, but like over full, with work, with activities, enrichment opportunities for our kids. We just can't have our kid on a baseball team in the summer who's playing 12 games. They need to be on a traveling team, a club team that's playing 60 games in the summer, and it's going out of town almost every weekend with the tournament. Busy, busy, busy. Also, as adults, we're also taking our work home with us. It's hard to get away from work now. It used to be much easier. You'd finish the work, you'd close up the books, and you'd get in the car, you drive home, and you didn't have to worry about things until the next morning. Obviously not true today. I think parents give up their vacation time. They're doing work on vacations. We're doing work on the weekends. We're doing work, work, work. And our kids are doing activities, activities, activities. So in a sense, we've turned over our schedule. We've turned over our time to other people, to teachers, coaches, our bosses, the workforce, our relatives, and also shoulds. We should do this. We should do that. And I also think, and I'll talk about this in this podcast today, one of the newest culprits has become our phones, our iPhones, our social media. That's obviously added on a huge layer, but we were getting busier even before that stuff came along. I think one of the driving narratives in our culture today is that we need to connect with more people, and we need to have more information, and we need to have this faster and faster and more with more and more intensity. So more and faster has become what's preferred. That's what's the norm. That didn't used to be true either. I think it's caused us as a culture to get information overload, to experience overstimulation, and a perceived lack of control over our lives. We feel like other people are in charge of us. Other people are in charge of our times, and that's not necessarily true unless you allow it. I think busyness and stress have become communicable diseases. It's like a badge of honor to be overly busy and to be stressed out with all the things we're doing. I think we've become much more competitive than we used to be. We're not normal anymore unless we're stressed out. And if you don't believe me, talk to your daughters. I work with girls today, especially ones who are in high school. They're so stressed out. And even if they're not that stressed out, they feel stressed out. And when they go to school, everybody's talking about how much homework they've done. I've done 4 hours of homework. I did 6. I was up till midnight. I was up till 3 o'clock. I haven't slept in 3 days. It's a competition to see who's the busiest and who's the most stressed. And I think all that has added to this sense of rush, 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 more, 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 faster, faster, faster. Parents, I think, have also bought into some fears. They're so afraid their kids are going to get behind and not keep up. I think it's about keeping up with the Joneses' children today. I've mentioned that before in previous podcasts. It's not keeping up with the Joneses, the neighbors next door who got a new car or a new washing machine or a new dishwasher. It's about keeping up with the Joneses' children who are getting private lessons for piano and who are getting a private semi-pro or a former professional athlete who's going to teach them how to pitch. More and more and more. They notice a kid across the street is going to 3 camps this summer, 3 sports camps, and your kid's only going to 1. My kid's going to get behind. He's not going to be able to make the high school team. If he doesn't make the high school team, how's he going to get a college scholarship? And that engine starts to rev up, rev up, rev up, more, more, more. We've raised the ante. It makes us all really stressed and really anxious. And because of that, parents tend to overdo, overschedule, micromanage, over-supervise. I think all that is contributing to this sense of rush that our kids are experiencing and also us as their parents. I think kids are also being taught by the culture, by us and the culture, to be overly focused on external things like looking good, impressing other people, being the best, being number one, being rich, being famous, being the best on your team at school, being on the best club teams, being on the best travel teams, going around the country to showcases. I've been looked at by 18 colleges already. I'm only in 8th grade. This relentless pressure to succeed and to beat everybody else and be on the best teams, not wanting to disappoint their parents. I think all that is contributing. I see so many girls in my counseling practice who are burned out from their activities, especially their sports. 12 months of the year, grind, grind, grind. No time off. I'll ask girls, how much time off do you get from your gymnastics? How much time off do you get off of your club volleyball? And they'll say, oh, I get time off. Well, when? How much? Well, I get 2 weeks in the summer. 2 weeks is not enough, mentally, emotionally, or physically. And I think the number of overuse sports injuries has gone up and up and up because of that. It's also created, I think, in our kids and us, this sense of never being enough, dissatisfaction, this relentless thing about never enough, more, more, more. I'm never good enough, discontented. That's such an important word, such a sad word that our kids, I think, are so discontented and dissatisfied. And I think because of all this competition, rushing, 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 that's also contributed to our sense of loneliness in our children, in our families, and in our culture. A lot of research showing that people are more lonely today than they have been in past times. There was a really good documentary I saw years ago, probably 10, 12 years ago, called The Race to Nowhere. Look it up. Talking about this, all this activities and things, and where is it leading us to? Burned out kids. Only about, I think, 2% of kids who are playing high school sports are going to be playing in college or getting a college scholarship, but everybody thinks their kid's going to get one. And so grind, grind, grind. I also think, and I've talked about this before, I think there's this pressure also that our kids need to grow up fast. They need to have their life figured out early. They need to know what their major is going to be in college. They need to know what their career is going to be. And they're talking about that at younger and younger ages. And I told you this before, and there's a brand new example from a week ago. My wife and I are working with a classroom of 5th grade girls. 5th grade girls. So these are girls who are probably 10 years of age. And when we asked them a question, we had this rope in the middle of the room and they were on one side. And we were saying things like cross the line if you have an annoying sibling. They all raced across. But one of the last questions I asked was cross the line if you ever worry about your future, and the girls rushed across, every girl except for one. And they didn't just walk across, they rushed across with it looked like, oh my gosh, yes, already stressed about things like high school and college and their career, what job they're going to have. We've really done a good job of pushing kids to feel that sense of grow up quick and have your whole life figured out. I think our phones, our devices, our social media kinds of things, all that also has conditioned us that we should never be bored, ever. Because if you're bored, it's so easy to pick up something and scroll or punch buttons, and then all of a sudden you've got a video game or one of those games on your phone, or you can watch a YouTube video, you can watch TikTok videos. It's so easy to just scroll, punch button, and then all of a sudden we're entertained again. We can quickly shift to the next stimulation. Winston Churchill had a nice quote years ago, obviously. He said, "We shape our buildings, and then our buildings shape us." I think that's true for technologies and social media as well. Every time we pick up one of those devices, we get a shot of dopamine to our reward center. And that reward center doesn't cause us to feel calm and peaceful and contented. It causes us to want more. It's a craving, it's a desire, which is why it's hard to put it down. It's hard not to hear that ping and want to open up that phone. It's so hard because we've all become addicted to those devices for good reason. The companies want us to be addicted. They want us to be on those things. So we get those shots of dopamine and we crave and we seek. And so that connection becomes a craving. And our brains are especially on the lookout for new things, novel things. We get more of a shot of dopamine when things are novel. I saw some research recently that we check our phones about 150 times a day, about once every 6 to 12 minutes that when we're awake. I saw another study that said the average smartphone user burns through about 14,000 hours of screen time over 10 years. 14,000. Think back to that study we all talk about a lot, the 10,000 hour rule, that if you want to be a master of your craft, you would put 10,000 hours of time into deep practice in that thing, whether it's drawing or art or soccer or whatever. And we are putting 14,000 hours of time over 10 years. We could be masters of some craft as opposed to a master of nothing. Another cost, I think, with all this rushing has become a sense of disconnection. I mentioned earlier, we're much lonelier and feeling more disconnected from people than we did in the past. The parts of our brain that allow us to process other people's emotions and their intentions, those are stimulated by eye contact. It's one of the main things that we're missing out on when we're talking to people on screens. We're talking to people with our iPhone. Even if it's FaceTime, it's different. It's not the same as being in person. We miss tones of voice. We miss body language. And we also miss real eye contact. It's that eye contact that make us more socially aware. It deepens our conversations. It deepens our connections. I saw one study that showed that girls who spend more time online had a less strong ability to identify their own feelings and the feelings of other people. More complicated emotions like admiration and compassion, those take longer to process at a neural level. So if things are happening too fast, scroll, call, this, that, multitasking, we lose out on that. We never really fully experience the emotions of other people because we're rushing through to the next call, the next novel stimulation. Again, contributing to a sense of disconnection. And also, I think, some more social anxiety, which a lot of young people say today that they experience. We've also been taught by the devices that if you get a ping, you're supposed to respond to it now, immediately. That's one of the unwritten rules is you respond to texts, you respond to calls, you respond to emails quickly, immediately. Otherwise, the other person may think you're mad at them. There's all kinds of miscommunications, but that expectation adds to our rushing feeling, being rushed. I mentioned before too about the cost of losing our depth of conversation and connections. We had about a year or so ago, one of the prizes or the things that people were bidding on at our yearly trivia night. We have a trivia night to raise money for scholarships for our summer camps and our weekend retreats, so the girls who can't afford it can come. It's always been important. We started that the second year of camps 32 years ago. Anyway, one of the prizes was you could get a dinner at the Jordan's house, Tim and Ann Jordan. So, we had a lot of camper parents there, and of course, their daughters would want to come to our house for dinner with Tim and Ann. So 4 girls came over, and we were sitting around and we were talking, we were playing board games. It was really fun. And then all of a sudden, one girl whips out her phone, and within seconds, there were 4 phones and 4 faces in 4 phones. It's all it took, one phone being out. All of a sudden, the connection was lost. And that happens all the time. We need those pauses in the conversations when we're just sitting around chatting to think, reflect, mirror the other person, empathize with the other person. So when those girls whip those phones out, I think we lost all that. And it also speeds up because someone will say, "Oh, look at this picture." Then they're saying, well, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And all of a sudden, there's this FOMO thing happening right in front of us. And it speeds up and it causes a little bit of angst, a little bit of anxiety. And thus, they rev up. They weren't as quiet and calm and peaceful as they were when that phone was in their pocket. Another thing that I think I've noticed it's contributing a lot to our sense of rush is multitasking. So if you're sitting there right now, listening to this in front of your computer, and you've got 6 screens open, right? And you've got 3 unread emails that have just alerted you in your inbox on the top of your screen, and then your phone buzzes. It's like all of a sudden, there's this sense of anxiety that also gets revved up because we're supposed to be, attuned to all of those things at once. And of course, you can't not answer your phone because you want that craving, that dopamine craving thing comes along. But then you also have these 6 screens open. And people who have researched multitasking, there's been a ton of research about how ineffective it is. We don't really do 5 things at once. We only do one thing at a time, but we think we're doing 5 things, but we're going from one to the next in short bursts. And so our full attention is never anywhere. And the quality of our work goes down, and it takes longer to do it. That's been shown over and over and over again. Also, when we're multitasking, it also contributes to brain overload, to information overload. There's just too much going on at once instead of focusing on one thing at a time. And when we get into that brain overload, that brain overstimulation, that also causes us to start working faster. We get more anxious, more worked up, if you will, more stressed. When we're multitasking, it shows that the stress hormones get released. And when stress hormones get released, we're more likely to feel anxious. And we're more likely to feel anxious, we start getting more and more worked up, and we start to want to go faster. That repeated task switching back and forth raises our anxiety level. It's interesting too. I found a study by a guy named Russ Poltrack. He's a neuroscientist at Stanford University. He found that learning information when you're multitasking causes the new information to go to the wrong part of the brain. If a student's studying and watching TV at the same time, for example, the information from their schoolwork goes into a part of the brain called the striatum. It's a region that specializes in storing new procedures and skills, not facts and ideas. Without the distraction of a TV or your phone or whatever, information goes into your hippocampus, where it's organized and categorized in a variety of ways, making it much easier to remember and to retrieve. Multitasking means it takes kids a lot longer to do their homework. It's less efficient, the work is less good. That's not very good English. And so because it takes them longer, they're up later, they're more tired, which contributes to their stress. And it means they're not going to do as well the next day. They're going to be less efficient. So it's going to have to be longer and longer and longer and later and later and later. And again, you can see how the rushing and the pace picks up. I saw another interesting study and I'll put this in my show notes, a link to it. It was saying, it was an article on why the modern world is bad for your brain. And this author was saying that if you think back 30, 40 years ago, a lot of the stuff that we do today was done by other people. Things like making airline reservations. You would call the company, right? And they would say, I need to go on this day. And then they would do that for you. Train reservations, reservations even for meals and things. Salespeople helped us looking for things in shops. We weren't online looking at 15 stores at once, right? We had someone saying, let me take you over here and show you. We had professional typists and secretaries who were helping with our correspondence. I even saw that one study that was showing how, or talking about how years ago, this is before emails, our mail came in the mailbox. So someone would write a letter, probably handwrite a letter, and put it in the envelope. And when you're handwriting a letter, it takes longer and you're more thoughtful. We tend to put more into it than if we're just typing away and then passing it on to the next one. We put an envelope, you put in the mailbox, you may not get it for 2 or 3 days. So you didn't expect a response right away because you didn't even know when the people were going to get it. Even the mail has sped us up because how many emails do you get a day? And you're expected to answer them now. Not in an hour, not tomorrow, but now. Again, more, rush, rush, rush. So we're doing the jobs of 10 different people now instead of being able to farm those things out or having other people do those for us. And we're also still trying to keep up with our lives, which have become busier with the activities I talked about before. One other point about what's making us maybe more rushed and more busy these days, especially the rush part, and that is, I think, I work with girls, I counsel girls, they ruminate a lot, overthink, overanalyze. They're in their heads a lot. And they'll get a bad grade on a quiz. And instead of saying, oh, it's just one quiz, I can make it up tomorrow, what they do is they'll say to themselves inside their heads, oh my gosh, I got a bad grade. Is that going to affect my GPA? Or if my GPA goes down? If my GPA goes down, oh my gosh, my whole cumulative GPA is going to go down. If that goes down, I want to get into a good college. So they're going to look at my grades. My grades aren't going to be as good. My GPA is not going to be good enough. If I can't get into a good college, I'm not going to be able to get a good job. If I can't get a good job, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to make enough money to afford an apartment. And they're off and running in their heads. And they're thinking faster than I'm even talking. That's what rumination does. It speeds us up. We spend way too much time worrying about the future, creating these scenarios and these stories about some worst case thing and getting anxious and worked up, and it speeds us up. We feel more rushed, if you will. People who struggle with racing thoughts are worrying about things that need to be done, things that haven't been done, what's next on my plate. We spend so much time all over there and not enough time in the moment, in the present moment where things can be a little slower down. So what can we do? What can we do to sort of slow ourselves down? I read a story years ago about this man who decided to go to Africa. And he was a hunter, and he hired this big team of Sherpas to help carry all of his stuff. So the first 3 days, he did a forced march. He wanted to get to the site he wanted to get to, this hunting area. They marched, and every night they would settle, they'd get to the camping place and everybody was exhausted. They marched. And after the third day of this, on the fourth morning, the man got up and said, let's go. And the Sherpas would not get up. They were exhausted. So this man went to the head of the Sherpas. He said, look, what's going on? And the head of the Sherpas said, they can go no further until their souls have caught up with their bodies. I would like that for our children. I would like for their souls to be caught up with their bodies, with their minds, with their social media, with all the busyness that they're doing. We need some gaps. We need times when they are unplugged, quiet, reflective time, downtime, time where they might, God forbid, be bored, not be busy, not have 14 things going on. We need those times for their brains to rest. And by the way, this is all true for us too, for adults as well. We need unplugged gaps in their schedules where there's no devices on, when they can actually do things like go outside, be out in nature, get more grounded, time for more creativity, time for deep thinking, time to play with ideas. Daydreaming is such a good thing that only happens with slow downtime. Our best ideas, our new creative ideas, tend to come during those times. They don't come when we're trying hard and we got 18 screens up. They come when we're a little bit bored. They come when we've slowed ourselves down. So you need to start creating some structured habits and rituals to sustain those kinds of times. Build them into your family. Talk to your kids about how can we have more downtime and what would it look like? It can look like things like unplugged time. The whole family could commit to things like we won't have our phones on in the car, even mom and dad. We won't be watching a screen in the car. God forbid, in your 10-minute drive to school, you have to have a laptop or a iPad and watch cartoons or watch a movie or whatever. That there's times like that when you can unplug and then just talk to each other. Little kids, I remember driving our kids places before all this technology, and we would sing nursery rhymes, do things like that. We would chat and giggle and laugh, talk about their days. That's